I was halfway through my morning coffee when my phone buzzed. Jake's name lit up the screen, and I almost ignored it. Tuesday mornings weren't typically his time for casual texts. But something made me swipe to read it. Dude, is Sarah okay? Just heard her on a podcast. Before I could type a response, another message appeared with a link to some radio show I'd never heard of. The subject line read, Modern Love, Navigating Open Marriages in America. My stomach did a weird flip. Open marriages? What the hell was Jake talking about? I stared at the link for a solid 30 seconds, my coffee growing cold in my hand. Sarah had left for her morning yoga class an hour earlier, same as every Tuesday for the past 2 years. She'd kissed me goodbye, reminded me about dinner with her parents Thursday night, and grabbed her usual green smoothie from the fridge. Nothing unusual. Nothing that would explain why my buddy was asking if she was okay or why he was sending me links about open marriages. I clicked the link. The podcast loaded with that typical public radio intro music, you know the kind, all synthesized and trying too hard to sound intellectual. The host had one of those smooth NPR voices that immediately made you think of pledge drives and tote bags. Today we're exploring the complex world of consensual non-monogamy with a woman who successfully navigated an open marriage for over 2 years. For privacy reasons, we've altered her voice, but she's graciously agreed to share her story with us. The altered voice that came through my phone speakers made my blood turn to ice water. It was Sarah. I knew it was Sarah the same way you know your own heartbeat or the sound of your own breathing. The voice modulation software had dropped her pitch and added some electronic distortion, but it couldn't hide the way she emphasized certain words, the slight pause she always took before saying, actually, or how she ended statements like questions when she was nervous. Well, it started about 2.5 years ago, the disguised voice continued. My husband and I had been married for 8 years, and we both felt like we needed something more. We'd always been very open in our communication, so when I brought up the idea of exploring relationships with other people, he was surprisingly receptive. I nearly dropped the phone. 8 years married? That was us. 2.5 years ago would put this conversation right around the time Sarah started going out more with her girlfriends, joining that book club, taking up yoga, signing up for those weekend photography workshops. All those new interests I'd been happy to see her pursue. The key is absolute honesty, Sarah's distorted voice explained to what the host mentioned was an audience of thousands across 3 states. We have rules, boundaries we've both agreed to. I see 2 regular partners currently, and he knows about both of them. We discuss everything, where I'm going, who I'm with, even some of the more intimate details if he wants to know. My hands started shaking. 2 regular partners, rules and boundaries we'd both agreed to. Intimate details I supposedly wanted to know about. None of this had ever happened. That level of transparency must be challenging, the host prompted. Oh, absolutely, but that's what makes it work. Last weekend, for example, I spent Saturday night with Michael Lee, he's the photographer I've been seeing for about 18 months, and Sunday afternoon with David, who I met through a mutual friend about 8 months ago. My husband knew exactly where I was both times. He even helped me pick out what to wear Saturday night. I remembered last weekend. Sarah had gone to some photography workshop Saturday, came home Sunday evening talking about composition techniques and lighting. I'd been watching football, barely looked up when she'd asked if her black dress looked okay for the group dinner they were planning. I'd mumbled something about her looking nice and gone back to the game. She'd been describing her outfit for a date, with someone named Michael. And your husband has similar arrangements? The host asked. He's more selective than I am, but yes, he's been seeing someone for about 6 months now. It took him longer to find his comfort zone with all this, but now he really embraces the lifestyle. We're both happier, more fulfilled. Our marriage is stronger than it's ever been. I hadn't been seeing anyone for 6 months. I hadn't been seeing anyone at all. I'd been working 50-hour weeks at the engineering firm, coming home to Sarah's cooking, watching Netflix together on the couch, making plans for the vacation to Colorado we'd booked for next month. The interview continued for another 20 minutes. Sarah Hemi, wife of 8 years, the woman who'd promised to forsake all others, described in clinical, cheerful detail a completely fictional version of our marriage. She talked about compersion, the joy she supposedly felt when I came home happy from my own dates. She discussed the communication techniques we'd supposedly developed, the counseling we'd allegedly done together to navigate this new dynamic. Every single word was a lie. When the podcast ended, I sat in my kitchen staring at my phone for I don't know how long. The coffee maker had turned itself off. The morning sun had shifted enough that it wasn't hitting the table anymore. My phone buzzed again. Jake. Man, I wasn't sure if I should send that or not. Recognized her voice even with the weird robot thing. Figured you'd want to know what was out there. Call me if you need anything. So Jake had recognized her too. If Jake could identify her through the voice modulation, how many other people had? How many of our friends, our coworkers, our neighbors had tuned into public radio this morning and heard my wife describe her active romantic life with multiple partners while painting me as a willing participant? I sat there staring at my phone for another 10 minutes, replaying fragments of Sarah's voice in my head. The way she'd paused before saying, actually, when describing her first encounter with Michael. That little upward inflection she got when she was nervous but trying to sound confident. Jake was right, no amount of voice modulation could hide 20 years of friendship and 8 years of marriage. The coffee had gone cold in my mug. I could hear Sarah upstairs, her footsteps moving between the bedroom and bathroom in that familiar morning rhythm. Shower running, hair dryer. The same routine she'd followed for years, except now I knew what she was really getting ready for. Photography workshop, my ass. I pulled up her calendar on my phone. We'd always shared everything, or so I thought. Today showed Community Center, Advanced Lighting Techniques, 10 a.m., 2 p.m. Last Tuesday, Book Club, Jennifer's house. The Tuesday before that, Yoga workshop, downtown studio. Every single Tuesday for months. My hands were shaking as I scrolled back through weeks of entries. Sarah had been meticulous about maintaining her cover stories. There were even a few Saturday entries. Coffee with Michael, photographer friend, and gallery opening with David. She'd been hiding in plain sight, listing her affairs right there in our shared calendar like they were legitimate social activities. The shower shut off upstairs. I needed to think. I needed to figure out what the hell I was going to say when she came down here, all bright-eyed and ready to head off to another workshop. But my brain felt like it was short-circuiting, bouncing between rage and disbelief and this weird, hollow numbness. Sarah's voice drifted down from the bedroom, humming something cheerful. The same woman who'd told thousands of radio listeners that I was incredibly supportive of her sleeping with other men, that I'd been exploring my own connections for 6 months, that we had amazing communication about our boundaries. What boundaries? What communication? What connections? I'd been working late most nights, trying to finish the Morrison project before the deadline. The only woman I'd talk to regularly outside of work was Mrs. Patterson next door, and that was usually just to accept packages or discuss the shared fence repair. Morning, babe. Sarah's voice carried down the stairs, bright and normal. Coffee smells amazing. I quickly closed the calendar app and shoved my phone in my pocket. She appeared in the doorway wearing those black leggings and the loose gray top she always wore to yoga, except she wasn't going to yoga. She was going to see Michael, the photographer she'd been sleeping with for 18 months. The one she described as incredibly talented and emotionally intuitive. You're up early, she said, moving to the coffee maker with practiced efficiency. Everything okay? I watched her pour coffee into her travel mug, add exactly 2 sugars and a splash of cream. The same routine, the same movements. But now it all felt like performance art. How long had she been acting? How long had I been the unwitting audience? Jake texted, I said carefully. Something about a podcast. Sarah's hand paused for just a fraction of a second before continuing to stir her coffee. Oh, yeah? What kind of podcast? He didn't say, just thought I might find it interesting. She nodded, not really listening. That's nice. Jake's always finding random stuff online. She glanced at her watch of the silver one I'd bought her for our anniversary last year. I should probably head out soon. The lighting workshop starts at 10, and you know how crazy downtown parking gets. There it was. The lie, delivered with the same casual tone she used to discuss grocery lists or weekend plans. I felt something cold settle in my chest, like swallowing ice water. What exactly are you learning about lighting? I asked. Oh, the usual technical stuff. How to work with natural light, indoor setups, that sort of thing. She was looking at her phone now, not at me. Michaely. He's the instructor. He's really good at explaining the complex concepts in simple terms. Michael. She'd just casually dropped his name into conversation like it meant nothing. Like he was just some random instructor and not the man she'd been having an affair with for a year and a half. Sounds educational, I managed. It really is. I feel like I'm finally understanding photography as an art form, not just point-and-shoot stuff. She grabbed her keys from the counter. David from the book club might stop by later, by the way. He wanted to borrow that photography book I mentioned. David. The second one. 8 months, according to the podcast. And she was planning to bring him to our house while I was at work. Which book? I asked. The Ansel Adams collection, the one on the coffee table. She leaned over and kissed my cheek, the same quick peck she'd given me every morning for years. Love you. Have a good day at work. And then she was gone, her footsteps clicking across the hardwood floor, the front door closing with its familiar squeak. Through the kitchen window, I watched her back out of the driveway in her blue Honda, probably humming along to whatever playlist she had queued up for her drive to meet her lover. I sat there in the sudden silence, staring at the Ansel Adams book on the coffee table. Had she bought it for David? Was it part of their shared interest? This thing they bonded over while I worked late nights trying to support the life we'd built together? My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Forgot to mention, might grab lunch after the workshop. Don't wait up. Oofoy. Lunch. With Michael, probably. Maybe they'd go to that little Caf C she'd been raving about lately, the one with the amazing atmosphere that she'd suggested we try sometime. Except we never had, because I was always too tired or too busy or too something. I pulled up the podcast link Jake had sent and hit play again, this time focusing on the details I'd missed the first time through my shock. We established some ground rules early on, Sarah's disguised voice was saying. Like, we always use protection with other partners. We check in with each other regularly about how we're feeling. And we never let outside relationships interfere with our primary commitment to each other. Ground rules. Check-ins. Primary commitment. The language of consensual non-monogamy delivered with the confidence of someone who'd done her research. Sarah had clearly studied this stuff, learned the terminology, crafted a narrative that sounded reasonable and healthy and mature. Except none of it was real. My husband has been seeing someone for about 6 months now, her voice continued. It was actually really beautiful to watch him open up to the possibility. He was nervous at first, but now he talks about her with such genuine affection. 6 months. Some mystery woman I was supposedly dating. Someone I talked about with genuine affection. I tried to imagine what Sarah told people when they asked about my girlfriend. Did she make up a name? A profession? Did she have an entire fictional relationship mapped out to support her story? The host's voice cut in. And your partners are aware of your marriage? There's full transparency all around? Oh, absolutely. Michael and David both know I'm married, and they're completely respectful of that boundary. They've even met my husband at a few social gatherings. It's all very above board. Social gatherings. When? Where? I'd never met anyone named Michael or David in any context that would make sense with Sarah's story. Unless the gallery opening. 3 months ago, Sarah had dragged me to some photography exhibition downtown. I'd been tired and grumpy about spending my Saturday looking at black and white landscapes, but she'd insisted it would be good for us to try new cultural experiences together. There had been a guy there, mid-30s, beard, expensive camera around his neck. Sarah had introduced him as a friend from the photography community. We'd talked for maybe 5 minutes about aperture settings and lens quality before I'd wandered off to find the bar. Had I shaken hands with the man who was sleeping with my wife? Had I made small talk about camera equipment while he mentally undressed the woman standing next to me? I sat there staring at my phone, Sarah's voice still echoing in my head from the podcast. The kitchen felt different now, like I was seeing it through someone else's eyes. The coffee maker she'd programmed last night. The yoga mat rolled up by the back door. The smoothie ingredients lined up on the counter for when she got back from her lighting workshop. Everything looked the same, but nothing was the same. My hands were shaking as I replayed Jake's text thread. "Dude, is your wife okay? Just heard her on a podcast." Then the link. Then 27 minutes of my wife describing a life I didn't know we were living. I needed to think. I needed to figure out what the hell I was going to do. But first, I needed to know more. I opened my laptop and Googled the radio station. KQED's morning show archives went back 6 months. The episode Jake had sent me was from yesterday, but I scrolled through the titles looking for anything else. Modern love stories. Redefining relationships. When traditional marriage isn't enough. Jesus. How many of these shows were there? I clicked on one from 3 weeks ago called Communication in Alternative Relationships. My stomach dropped as I recognized the host's voice introducing the same segment format. But this time, the guest was a different woman talking about polyamory. Not Sarah. Thank God, not Sarah. But it made me wonder, how did Sarah even know about this show? Had she been listening to these episodes planning? The thought made my skin crawl. I went back to yesterday's episode and listened again, this time taking notes. Sarah had been so specific. Michael, the photographer, 18 months. David, 8 months. She'd mentioned that I supposedly had my own relationship, some woman named Lisa, who worked in marketing. Lisa. I didn't know any Lisa in marketing. I barely knew anyone in marketing, period. But the details Sarah had given about my relationship were eerily accurate to my actual schedule. She'd mentioned that I worked late on Thursdays, which I did, because that's when our team had its weekly project reviews. She'd said I sometimes went out for drinks after work on Fridays, also true, though it was just with my coworkers and I was usually home by 8. She'd taken my real life and built a fake narrative around it. How long had she been watching me, cataloging my routines, turning my innocent activities into cover stories for her lies? My phone buzzed. Sarah. Workshop is running long. Might grab lunch after. Home by 3? I stared at the text. Even now, even after everything I just heard, she was still lying. Still pretending to be at some photography workshop with Michael Leith, same Michael she'd been sleeping with for a year and a half. I typed back, "Sure, see you then." What else was I supposed to say? "Hey, heard you on the radio this morning describing our open marriage that doesn't exist?" I needed more information before I confronted her. I needed to understand the scope of this. I called in sick to work. My boss didn't question it. I'd barely taken any sick days in the past 3 years. Then I started going through everything. Our joint bank account first. I pulled up 18 months of statements and started looking for patterns. Photography equipment purchases that I'd assumed were for her new hobby. Dinners out that she'd said were with her book club friends. A weekend trip to Portland that she'd claimed was for a photography workshop. The Portland trip. I remembered that weekend. Sarah had been so excited about it, showing me the workshop brochure, talking about the instructors she'd be learning from. I'd even driven her to the airport, kissed her goodbye, told her to have fun. She'd come back with new photos on her camera. Landscapes, street scenes, portraits of other workshop attendees. I'd looked through them with her, proud of how much her skills were improving. Had Michael been there? Had they shared a hotel room while I was at home, missing her, looking forward to her return? I felt sick. Next, I went through her computer. Sarah had never been secretive about it. We knew each other's passwords, used each other's laptops interchangeably. But now I was looking at it differently. Her browser history showed searches for photography techniques, which made sense, but also searches for relationship advice forums, articles about open marriages, and this made my blood run cold. Voice modulation software. She'd researched how to disguise her voice for the podcast. This wasn't some impulsive decision. She'd planned this. She'd studied for it. I found bookmarks for 3 different relationship forums where people discussed non-monogamy. Sarah had created accounts on all of them. I logged into the first one using her saved password. Her profile showed dozens of posts over the past 8 months. She'd been asking for advice about bringing up the topic with a spouse. She'd described our relationship in detail, asking other users how to transition from monogamy to openness. But here's what made me want to throw the laptop across the room. In every single post, she wrote as if we'd already discussed it. As if I was just hesitant, needed more time, required gentle persuasion. My husband is interested but nervous, she'd written in one post. He's worried about jealousy. Any tips for helping him work through that? Update. We had another good conversation last night. Read another post from 6 weeks ago. He's definitely warming up to the idea. I think we're almost ready to set some ground rules. She'd been living in a complete fantasy world. Or maybe, and this thought was worse, she'd been building up to actually having those conversations with me. Maybe the podcast was her way of testing the waters, seeing if anyone would recognize her before she came clean. But that didn't make sense either. If she'd wanted to transition to an open marriage, why not just talk to me? Why create this elaborate fiction about my consent? Unless she knew I'd never agree. My phone rang. Jake. Hey man, how are you holding up? I stopped. How was I holding up? I'm trying to figure out what the hell is going on. Did you talk to her? She's not home. She's at a photography workshop with Michael. Jake was quiet for a moment. The same Michael from the podcast? Yeah. Shit, dude. I'm sorry. I really hoped I was wrong about the voice thing. You weren't wrong. I told him about the forum posts, the browser history, the voice modulation research. Jesus, she really planned this whole thing out. The part I can't figure out is why. Why go on a public radio show? Why risk people recognizing her? Maybe she didn't think anyone would. I mean, if you hadn't told me about her photography stuff, I might not have put it together. It was just the way she paused before saying, actually, that's such a Sarah thing. He was right. Sarah did that. Had done it for as long as I'd known her. It was one of those verbal tics that people close to you notice, but strangers might not. How many people do you think heard it? I asked. It's NPR, man. That show probably has tens of thousands of listeners across the region. Maybe more if people shared online. The thought made me dizzy. Tens of thousands of people had heard my wife describe our sex life, our relationship, our supposed arrangement. People who might know us might recognize other details even if they didn't catch her voice. I have to confront her, I said. Yeah, you do. But maybe have a plan first? Like, what do you want to happen after you talk to her? I hadn't thought that far ahead. I'd been so focused on understanding what she'd done that I hadn't considered what came next. I don't know, I admitted. Just be careful, okay? This is a lot of deception, like really elaborate stuff. I don't know what someone does when they get caught in something this big. After Jake hung up, I sat in the quiet kitchen, staring at the evidence I'd gathered. Bank statements, forum posts, browser history. A paper trail of lies stretching back months. Sarah would be home in a few hours, and then we were going to have a conversation that would change everything. I spent the next hour going through everything systematically. Every photo on her phone from the past 2 years. Every calendar entry, every text message thread I could access. The photography workshops weren't workshops at all. They were hotel stays. The book club meetings happened at David's apartment. Sarah had been living two completely separate lives, and she'd gotten so comfortable with the deception that she'd gone on public radio to talk about it. The worst part wasn't even the cheating. It was how normal everything felt at home. How she still made me coffee in the mornings, still asked about my day, still curled up next to me at night. How she could look me in the eye and lie so effortlessly about where she'd been, what she'd done, who she'd seen. My phone buzzed. Sarah, texting from her workshop. Having such a great time, learning so much about composition and lighting. Michael is an amazing teacher. Probably won't be home until late. We're doing a sunset shoot. Love you. I stared at the message. Even now, even after I knew everything, she was still lying. Still maintaining the fiction. Still signing off with love you like it meant something. I screenshot the message and added it to my growing collection of evidence. Then I did something I'd never done before. I opened her laptop. Sarah had always been casual about passwords. We used the same one for most things. Jasper 2015, after our dog and the year we got married. I tried it on her laptop and it worked immediately. Her browser history was a roadmap of deception. Searches for how to disguise voice for radio, voice modulation software free download, open marriage success stories, polyamory communication techniques. She'd spent hours researching how to sound convincing when talking about a lifestyle she was pretending to live. But there was more. A folder on her desktop labeled Research contained dozens of articles about consensual non-monogamy, downloaded podcasts about open relationships, even a draft of what looked like a book proposal about navigating modern marriage boundaries. A book proposal. I opened it, and my stomach dropped even further. Sarah had been planning to write a book about our supposedly open marriage. The proposal was addressed to 3 different literary agents, describing her unique perspective as someone in a successful, communicative, open relationship, and her ability to guide other couples through the process. She was going to monetize our fake open marriage. The proposal included a detailed outline, chapters on having the conversation, setting boundaries, managing jealousy, compersion, and growth. She'd written sample pages describing conversations we'd never had, emotions I'd never felt, agreements we'd never made. In her version, I was an eager participant who'd suggested opening our marriage first. In her version, I was someone I didn't recognize. I found her email drafts folder. 3 different versions of query letters to agents. A follow-up email to someone at NPR about doing a longer segment. A response to a podcast network interested in having her host her own show about open relationships. Sarah wasn't just cheating. She was building a career around pretending our marriage was something it wasn't. The radio interview wasn't a one-time thing, it was marketing. She was positioning herself as an expert in a field she knew nothing about, using our relationship as her credentials. My phone rang. Jake. Hey man, how are you holding up? I looked around the kitchen, at Sarah's coffee mug still sitting by the sink, at the grocery list she'd written in her neat handwriting stuck to the refrigerator. I don't know. Did you find anything else? I told him about the book proposal, the query letters, the plans for more media appearances. Jake was quiet for a long time. Jesus, he finally said. She was going to make this her job. Yeah. What are you going to do? I'd been asking myself the same question all morning. Part of me wanted to pack a bag and disappear. Part of me wanted to call her right now and scream. Part of me wanted to pretend I'd never heard that podcast, never seen any of this evidence, never learned that my entire marriage was built on lies. I don't know, I said again. When does she get home? I checked the time. It was almost 3. Sarah's fake workshop was supposed to end at 5, but she'd said she might be late because of the sunset shoot. In reality, she was probably planning to spend the evening with Michael, then come home around 9 or 10 with stories about golden hour lighting and composition techniques. Not until tonight. You want me to come over? You shouldn't be alone with all this. I almost said yes. Having Jake here would make it feel less surreal, less like I was losing my mind. But I needed to figure out what I was going to say to Sarah when she walked through that door. I needed to decide how much I was going to reveal, how much I was going to let her dig herself deeper before I showed her what I knew. Thanks, but I need to think. Okay, but call me if you need anything. And listen, document everything. Take pictures, make copies. If this goes where I think it's going, you're going to need proof. After Jake hung up, I did exactly that. I photographed every screen, every document, every piece of evidence I'd found. I created a folder on my own laptop and organized everything chronologically. The forum posts where she'd pretended we'd had conversations about opening our marriage. The hotel receipts hidden in her email. The research into voice disguising. The book proposal. The query letters. By the time I finished, it was almost 5 o'clock. Sarah would be texting soon to say the workshop was running late, that she'd be home around 9. Right on schedule. I made myself a sandwich and sat at the kitchen table staring at my phone. Part of me wanted to text her back when she inevitably sent her delay message. Something like, "How's Michael?" or "Learning a lot about more than photography?" But that would tip her off, and I wasn't ready for that conversation yet. I needed to see her face when she walked through the door. I needed to watch her maintain the lie in person, look me in the eye, and tell me about her amazing day learning about lighting techniques. I needed to see how far she was willing to take this. My phone buzzed. Workshop running late. Michael wants to get some shots during golden hour. Might not be home until 9 or 10. Don't wait up. XOXO. I stared at the message for a full minute before responding. No problem. Have fun. Love you too. The words felt like ash in my mouth, but I sent them anyway, because I needed her to think everything was normal. I needed her to come home relaxed and unsuspecting, ready to tell me all about her fictional day. I needed to hear her lie to my face one more time before I played that podcast and watched her world fall apart. The house felt different now. Every familiar object, the couch we'd picked out together, the wedding photos on the mantle, the coffee maker she'd bought me for my birthday, felt like evidence of a life that had never really existed. Or maybe it had existed, but only for me. For Sarah, it had always been a cover story. I walked upstairs to our bedroom and opened her nightstand drawer. Hidden underneath some old magazines was a small notebook I'd never seen before. I flipped through it, and my hands started shaking. It was a journal of sorts, but not the kind I'd expected. Instead of feelings or confessions, it was full of logistics. Meeting times, hotel names, cover stories. She'd been tracking her lies like a business expense report. March 15th. Told J Photography Workshop 2 to 6. Actually, David's place. March 22nd. Book club excuse with Michael until 11. April 3rd. Yoga retreat weekend. Fake. Actually hotel with Michael. Page after page of calculated deception. She'd been keeping score. I put the notebook back exactly where I'd found it and went back downstairs. In a few hours, Sarah would walk through that door with her camera bag and her fake stories and her practiced smile. She'd kiss me hello and ask about my day and tell me all about the amazing things she'd learned about photography. And then I'd play her the podcast, and everything would change forever. The kitchen felt different when Sarah walked in at 4:47 p.m., her camera bag slung over her shoulder and that familiar post-workshop glow on her face. I was sitting at the counter with my laptop open. The podcast paused at the 23-minute mark where she described our communication protocols. "Hey, babe," she said, setting down her bag and heading straight for the fridge. "Michael showed us this incredible technique for capturing golden hour portraits today. I got some amazing shots of ye. How was the sex?" She froze with the fridge door half open, a bottle of sparkling water in her hand. "What?" "With Michael. Today. How was it?" I kept my voice level, conversational, like I was asking about traffic. The bottle slipped from her fingers and hit the kitchen floor, exploding in a shower of glass and carbonated water. Sarah just stood there, staring at the mess, her face cycling through confusion, panic, and something that might have been relief. "I don't know what you're talking about." But her voice had that upward inflection, the one she got when she was nervous. The same inflection I'd heard on the radio show. I turned my laptop around so she could see the browser window, her research history, the forum posts, the voice modulation software downloads. 18 months, Sarah. Michael the photographer. 8 months with David from your book club that doesn't exist. She looked at the screen, then at me, then back at the screen. Her mouth opened and closed a few times before she managed, "How did you?" "Jake heard you on NPR this morning. Turns out voice disguising software isn't as foolproof as you thought." I clicked play on the podcast. Her altered voice filled the kitchen, describing our supposedly happy open marriage to thousands of listeners. My husband was actually the one who brought up the idea initially. He'd been reading about ethical non-monogamy and felt like we had such strong communication that we could handle it. We spent months talking through boundaries and expectations before either of us acted on anything. I paused it. "Months of communication, Sarah." "Really?" "Because I don't remember a single conversation about opening our marriage. Not one." She was still staring at the broken glass, water soaking into her shoes. "It's not—" "I can explain." "Please do." "Because I've spent the entire day trying to figure out what the hell I'm missing. Did I have some kind of breakdown? Memory loss? Did I agree to this and somehow forget?" "No." The word came out barely above a whisper. "No, what?" "No, you didn't agree to it." She finally looked up at me, and I saw something I'd never seen in her face before, a genuine fear. "But I thought I was going to talk to you about it. Eventually." "Eventually?" "Sarah, you've been sleeping with 2 other men for over a year. You went on public radio and told thousands of people we have an open marriage. When exactly was eventually going to happen?" She stepped carefully around the broken glass and sat down across from me. Her hands were shaking. "I know how this looks." "How this looks?" "This isn't about how it looks. This is about what it is. You've been lying to me for 18 months. You've been having affairs and telling the world I'm okay with it." "They weren't affairs." Her voice got stronger, more defensive. "I mean, yes, technically, but I always planned to make it legitimate. I was researching how to approach you about opening our relationship." I stared at her. "So you decided to start sleeping around first and ask permission later?" "It wasn't like that. Michael and I, it just happened. We were working late on a project and there was this connection and a—" "Stop." I held up a hand. "Just stop. I don't want the details of how you cheated on me. I want to know why you went on a radio show and lied about it." She was quiet for a long moment, picking at the edge of the counter. The producer reached out to me through one of the forums. They were looking for people in successful open relationships to interview, and I thought it might help. "Help what?" "Help me figure out how to talk to you about it." If I could articulate why it worked, maybe I could convince you to try it for real. The logic was so twisted I almost laughed. So you pretended we already had an open marriage to practice asking me for an open marriage? I know it sounds crazy, but I was scared. You're so traditional. I didn't think you'd understand. Traditional? Sarah, we've been married 8 years. When have I ever been unreasonable about anything? When have I ever shut down a conversation before hearing you out? She didn't answer. And even if I was the most conservative person on the planet, that still wouldn't justify lying to me, or cheating on me, or going on public radio and making up stories about our marriage. I used voice modulation. No one was supposed to know it was me. Jake recognized your voice in 30 seconds. How many other people do you think figured it out? How many of our friends, our coworkers, our families are going to hear this and think I'm some kind of cuckold who's okay with sharing his wife? Her face went pale. I didn't think about that. You didn't think about a lot of things. I pulled up another browser tab. Like how you were going to explain the book deal. What book deal? The one you've been researching. Publishers who specialize in relationship memoirs. Literary agents who represent lifestyle writers. You've been building an entire career plan around our fake open marriage. She slumped in her chair like I'd punched her. You went through everything. I went through everything. The fake forum profiles where you pretend to be both of us. The detailed logs of your lies. The calendar where you track your cover stories. Jesus, Sarah, you turned cheating on me into a full-time job. I never meant for it to go this far. But it did go this far. You didn't just cheat on me, you built an entire alternate reality around it. And then you broadcast that reality to thousands of strangers. We sat in silence for a while, the only sound coming from the laptop's fan and the occasional car passing outside. Sarah kept looking at the broken glass on the floor, like it was the most fascinating thing she'd ever seen. What happens now? She finally asked. Now? Now I don't know. I've been sitting here all day trying to figure out who you are because the woman I married wouldn't do this, wouldn't lie this elaborately, wouldn't risk our marriage for some fantasy career built on deception. I'm still me. Are you? Because the Sarah I know would have talked to me before making major life decisions. The Sarah I know wouldn't have spent 18 months living a double life. People change. People change, but they don't usually change into completely different people without their spouse noticing. How did I miss this? How did I miss that my wife of 8 years was capable of this level of deception? You work a lot. You travel for projects. It wasn't that hard to... Don't? I closed the laptop harder than I needed to. Don't make this about my work schedule. Don't make this about me not paying enough attention. You made deliberate choices every single day for over a year. You looked me in the eye every morning and every night and lied. She started crying then, quiet tears that she wiped away with the back of her hand. I'm sorry. Sorry for what, specifically? Sorry for cheating? Sorry for lying? Sorry for the radio show? Sorry for getting caught? All of it. I'm sorry for all of it. That's not good enough, Sarah. Sorry for all of it doesn't tell me anything. It doesn't tell me why you did it, or whether you do it again, or whether anything you've ever said to me was true. She looked up at me then, and for a moment I saw a flash of the woman I'd married. But it was gone so quickly I wondered if I'd imagined it. I don't know what you want me to say. I want you to tell me the truth. For once. Just once, I want you to tell me what actually happened and why. The sun was setting outside our kitchen window, casting long shadows across the floor. Sarah sat there in the fading light, surrounded by broken glass and the wreckage of our marriage, and I realized I wasn't sure she even knew what the truth was anymore. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Sarah stood there, her yoga mat still clutched in one hand, looking smaller somehow than she had moments before. The kitchen felt different now. Not the warm heart of our home, but a crime scene where 8 years of marriage had just been dissected. "So what happens now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I stared at her. This woman I'd shared a bed with for nearly a decade, and realized I didn't know her at all. The Sarah I'd married wouldn't have done this. Or maybe she would have, and I'd been too blind to see it. "I honestly don't know," I said. "I keep thinking I'm going to wake up and this will all be some nightmare." She set the yoga mat down against the counter. "Tom, I know this looks batty." "Looks bad?" The words came out sharper than I intended. "You went on national radio and told thousands of people we have an open marriage. You've been sleeping with other men for over a year. You wrote forum posts pretending we'd discuss this. You have a book proposal, Sarah. A book proposal about our fake lifestyle. I was going to tell you. When?" I stood up, the chair scraping against the floor. "When exactly were you planning to tell me? After the book got published? After you became some relationship guru on the talk show circuit?" She flinched. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this." "How was it supposed to happen? Walk me through your plan because I'm genuinely curious how you thought this would play out." Sarah wrapped her arms around herself. I thought if I could show you how normal it could be, how other couples make it work, you might be more open to the idea." By lying to me for 18 months? By researching it. By understanding it myself first. She looked up at me, and for a moment I saw something that might have been genuine remorse. "I know it sounds crazy now, but I thought if I could prove it wasn't just about sex, that it could actually strengthen our relationship." "Our relationship was fine, Sarah. At least I thought it was." "Was it, though?" She took a step closer. "Tom, we barely see each other anymore. You work 60-hour weeks. I'm home alone most evenings. We haven't had a real conversation in months. So you decided to have affairs instead of talking to me about feeling lonely?" I didn't plan for it to happen. Michael and I started talking at that first photography workshop, and it just developed. But then I realized how alive I felt, how much more like myself. And I started researching, and I found all these couples who'd found ways to have both of the security of marriage and the excitement of new connections. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You found ways to justify cheating." "That's not what this is." "Then what is it?" Because from where I'm standing, it looks exactly like cheating with extra steps in a public relations campaign. Sarah's face crumpled. "I love you, Tom. I never stopped loving you. That's why I couldn't just leave. Why I couldn't just ask for a divorce. I wanted to find a way to have both. Without asking me if I wanted the same thing. Because I knew you'd say no." The honesty of it hit me like a physical blow. "So you decided to make the choice for both of us." "I decided to explore the possibility. You decided to cheat on me and then gaslight an entire radio audience into thinking I was okay with it." I pulled out my phone and scrolled to the podcast transcript I'd saved. "Listen to this. My husband was actually the one who first brought up the idea of opening our marriage." That's what you said, Sarah, on public radio. The voice modulation. "Jake recognized you anyway. How many other people do you think figured it out? How many of our friends, our neighbors, your co-workers heard that interview and thought they knew something about our private life?" She went pale. "I didn't think." "No, you didn't think. You were so busy playing relationship expert that you didn't consider the real-world consequences." I set the phone down harder than necessary. "Do you have any idea how humiliating this is? My friend had to text me to tell me about my own marriage." "I'm sorry." "Are you? Or are you just sorry you got caught?" The question hung in the air. Sarah opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again. "I don't know," she said finally. "I honestly don't know anymore." At least that was honest. I walked to the window and stared out at our backyard. The garden Sarah had planted last spring was overgrown now, weeds choking out the flowers she'd been so excited about. Another thing she'd started and abandoned. The book proposal, I said without turning around. How far along is that? I sent a query letter to 3 agents last week. Jesus Christ. Tumum. I spun around. You were going to build a career on this lie. You were going to make money pretending to be something we're not. I thought by the time anything came of it, we'd have worked things out. Worked things out? You mean you thought you'd have convinced me to go along with your retroactive permission slip? I thought you might see the benefits. The benefits of my wife sleeping with other men? Help me understand what you thought I'd find appealing about that. She was crying now, silent tears that she didn't bother to wipe away. I thought you might want to explore too. You used to talk about traveling, about experiences you wanted to have. I thought maybe this could be part of that. I wanted to travel with you, Sarah. I wanted experiences with my wife. You're never here. I'm working to support us, to support the life we built together. The life I was slowly disappearing in. I stared at her. So this is my fault? Because I work long hours? That's not what I'm saying. Then what are you saying? I'm saying we both let our marriage drift. I'm saying I felt invisible, and instead of fighting for your attention, I found it somewhere else. I'm saying I handled it wrong, but I'm not the only one who stopped trying. The accusation stung because there was truth in it. I had been working more, staying late at the office, coming home tired and distracted. But that didn't justify what she'd done. Even if that's true, I said, even if we both let things slide, the solution wasn't to go behind my back and create an elaborate fantasy life. I know that now. Do you? Because 18 months is a long time to maintain a lie this complex. This wasn't a mistake or a moment of weakness. This was a sustained campaign of deception. Sarah sank into the chair I'd vacated, her head in her hands. I kept thinking I'd find the right moment to bring it up, but the longer it went on, the harder it became to figure out how to start that conversation. How about, Tom, I've been having an affair and I'd like to talk about opening our marriage. That would have been a start. You would have divorced me. Maybe, but at least I would have had the choice. She looked up at me, mascara smudged under her eyes. And now? I didn't answer because I didn't know. The woman sitting in my kitchen looked like my wife, but everything I thought I knew about her had been revealed as fiction. How do you rebuild a marriage when you're not sure who you're married to? My phone buzzed. A text from Jake. How did it go? You okay? I showed Sarah the screen. He's worried about me. My friend is worried about me because he had to tell me my wife was living a double life. I never meant for it to go this far. But it did go this far. You went on national radio, Sarah. You have forum posts, research files, a book proposal. This isn't something that just happened. This is something you built. She nodded miserably. I know. So what happens now? I asked again. I don't know, she whispered. I honestly don't know. Neither did I. But sitting in our kitchen, looking at this stranger who wore my wife's face, I knew that whatever happened next, we couldn't go back to the way things were. That version of our marriage, the one I'd thought was real, was gone forever. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Sarah sat at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around her coffee mug, staring into it like it might hold answers. I stood by the counter, still holding my phone, the podcast app still open to that damning episode. So what happens now? I finally asked. She looked up, and for the first time since this whole thing started, she looked genuinely scared. Not caught in a lie scared, but something deeper. I don't know. You don't know. I set the phone down harder than necessary. You had 18 months to figure this out, Sarah. 18 months of planning and lying and whatever this was. And you don't know? I thought... She stopped, shook her head. I thought I had more time. More time for what? To find more guys? To book more hotel rooms? To write your best-selling memoir about our fake open marriage? The book proposal. Jesus, the book proposal. I'd almost forgotten about that and all the other revelations. She was going to make money off this lie. Probably already had meetings set up with publishers based on the response to the podcast. The book thing wasn't, she trailed off. Wasn't what? Wasn't real? Because I saw the email, Sarah. I saw the whole pitch. My husband and I discovered that opening our marriage actually strengthened our bond. That's a direct quote. She flinched. I know how it looks. How it looks? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. It looks like you were building an entire career on a lie about our marriage. It looks like you were planning to go on book tours and give interviews about our amazing communication and trust while I sat at home completely clueless. My phone buzzed. Another text from Jake. Hey man, just checking in. You okay? I showed Sarah the screen. Jake's worried about me. You know what's funny? He knows more about what's been happening in my marriage than I do. Tom, please. No. I held up my hand. You don't get to Tom, please me. Not after this. Do you have any idea what it felt like to sit here and listen to you describe our sex life to thousands of strangers? To hear you talk about how understanding and supportive I am of your relationships with other men? She was crying again, but quietly this time. I never meant for you to hear it. That's not the point. The point is you said it. You went on public radio and lied about me, about us, about everything. I ran my hands through my hair. God, Sarah, people I work with probably heard that. My parents listen to NPR. What if they won't recognize my voice? Jake did. Jake knows me better than your parents do. That's not a... I stopped. She was right technically, but it missed the point entirely. It doesn't matter who recognizes you. You put our private life on the radio. You made up stories about me agreeing to this, about me having relationships I've never had. You turned our marriage into fiction. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I know it was wrong. Do you? Because 18 months ago it was wrong. 6 months ago it was wrong. Last week when you were probably planning your next book chapter it was wrong. But you kept going. The coffee maker gurgled, finishing its cycle. Such a normal sound in such an abnormal morning. I wondered if I'd ever be able to hear it again without thinking about this conversation. I need to know something, I said. And I need you to be honest for once. Was any of this about me? About us? Or was it just about you wanting to sleep with other people? She was quiet for a long time. Both, I guess. That's not an answer. I don't know how to answer it. Try. She took a shaky breath. I love you. I do. But I felt trapped, I guess. Like I was missing out on something. And then I met Michael, and it was exciting and new. And I convinced myself it wasn't really cheating because I wasn't emotionally involved. But you were, with both of them. Not at first, but eventually. Yeah, eventually. I poured myself coffee just to have something to do with my hands. So, when did the podcast idea come up? When did you decide to turn this into a public thing? A few months ago. I was on the forums and people kept asking for success stories, real examples of how it could work. And I thought maybe if I could show that it was possible, that normal couples could do this. You thought you could convince me after the fact. Maybe, I don't know. I wasn't thinking clearly. You researched voice modulation software, Sarah. You wrote detailed forum posts. You kept spreadsheets. That's not thinking clearly. That's planning. She didn't have an answer for that. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize. Then another, and another. What the hell? I opened the messages. The first one just said, heard your wife on NPR, sorry man. The second, dude, is this real? The open marriage thing? The third, Tom, it's Kevin from college. Just wanted to say I'm here if you need to talk. Oh no, My stomach dropped. Oh, no, no, no. What? I showed her the messages. People are figuring it out. They're connecting the dots. Her face went white. How? I don't know. Maybe someone recognized something else about the story. Maybe they put together the timeline or the details about your job, or I kept scrolling through messages. Jesus, there are more coming in. The reality of it hit me like a truck. This wasn't just between us anymore. This wasn't something we could work through privately, if we even could work through it at all. She'd made our marriage public, and now our private crisis was becoming public too. I need to call in sick, I said. I can't go to work today. I can't sit in meetings and pretend everything's normal while people are texting me about my wife's radio interview. Tom, I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't fix this, Sarah. Sorry doesn't take back the podcast or the lies or the fact that people I haven't talked to in years are reaching out because they feel bad for me. My phone rang. Jake, I have to take this. Tom, hey. Jake's voice was careful. I've been thinking about this morning and I wanted to check on you. How are you holding up? Not great, man, and it's getting worse. People are figuring out it was Sarah. I'm getting messages. Shit. I'm sorry. I didn't think about that when I sent you the link. No, you did the right thing. I needed to know. It's just… I looked at Sarah, who was watching me with red eyes. It's a mess. You want me to come over? I can be there in 20 minutes. I don't know, maybe. Let me figure out what I'm doing first. Okay. But Tom, whatever you decide to do, don't make any big decisions today. This is a lot to process. After I hung up, Sarah asked, what did he say? That I shouldn't make any big decisions today. That's probably good advice. Is it? Because I feel like the decision's already been made. You made it 18 months ago when you started this whole thing. She stood up, moved toward me. Tom, please. We can figure this out. We can get counseling. Can we? Can we really? Because I don't even know who you are anymore. The woman I married wouldn't have done this. The woman I married wouldn't have lied to me for 18 months and then gone on the radio to lie about me to thousands of strangers. I'm still me. Are you? Because the Sarah I knew was honest. She was trustworthy. She wouldn't have kept spreadsheets of her lies or written book proposals about our fake open marriage. My phone buzzed again. Another message from someone I barely remembered from high school. The humiliation was spreading, rippling outward like waves from a stone thrown in still water. I need some air, I said. I need to think. Don't leave, please. I'm not leaving. I need space to process this. But as I walked toward the back door, I wondered if that was true. Maybe I was leaving. Maybe this was the beginning of the end of everything we'd built together. The morning air was cool against my face, and for the first time in hours, I could breathe. The night air hit my face like a slap, but it felt good. Clean. I stood on our front porch, looking out at the street where we'd lived for 5 years. The same street where Sarah waved to Mrs. Patterson every morning, where we'd hosted block parties, where everyone knew us as the nice couple from the Blue House. My phone buzzed. Another text from Jake. Hey man, you okay? That was heavy stuff to drop on you. I stared at the screen, trying to figure out how to respond. How do you explain that your entire marriage just imploded in the span of 30 minutes? Still processing, I typed back. Want me to come over? Not yet. Thanks, though. Inside, I could hear Sarah moving around, probably cleaning up the evidence I'd scattered across the kitchen table. Always cleaning, always organizing. Even her lies had been meticulously organized. My phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Is this Tom Martinez? Who's asking? This is Dr. Rebecca from the University of Washington. I'm researching contemporary relationship dynamics, and I heard the NPR interview with your wife. I was wondering if you and Sarah might be interested in participating in a study about successful open marriages. The world tilted sideways. I'm sorry, what? The interview your wife gave yesterday? About your open marriage arrangement? It was fascinating. The way she described your communication patterns and boundary setting. There's been a mistake, I said, my voice sounding weird and distant. We don't have an open marriage. Silence on the other end. Then, oh, oh my God. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have. I hung up. The front door opened behind me. Sarah stepped out, wrapping her cardigan around herself. Tom? I didn't turn around. How many people do you think heard that interview? I don't know. It was just one segment. NPR has millions of listeners, Sarah. Millions. She was quiet for a moment. The voice modulation was supposed to. Jake recognized you in 30 seconds. 30 seconds. I finally turned to face her. How long before everyone we know figures it out? Maybe they won't. Maybe. My phone rang again. This time it was a number I recognized. My brother Danny in Portland. Don't answer it, Sarah said quickly. I answered it. Dude, Danny's voice was tight with concern. Please tell me that wasn't Sarah on the radio today. I closed my eyes. You heard it? I was driving to work. Tom, what the hell is going on? Mom's going to lose her mind when she finds out. Mom? She listens to that show every morning. If she didn't hear it live, someone's going to tell her. You know how the family group chat gets? The family group chat. 47 relatives across 3 states, all connected by my Aunt Maria's obsession with keeping everyone updated on everything. If one person in that chat had heard the interview, I have to go, I told Danny. Tom, wait a. I hung up and immediately opened the family group chat. 17 new messages, all from the last hour. Did anyone else hear something weird on NPR today? What kind of weird? Like, about open marriages? The woman sounded familiar. OMG, was that Sarah? No way. Sarah and Tom? I'm pretty sure it was her. Same laugh. Someone needs to call Tom. This is so awkward. Should we pretend we didn't hear it? How do you pretend you didn't hear your cousin-in-law talking about sleeping with multiple men on public radio? I showed the phone to Sarah. She went pale. Oh God. Yeah. I scrolled through more messages. Looks like Cousin Rita was the first to recognize you. She's got good ears. Sarah sank down onto the porch steps. This is a nightmare. For you or for me? She looked up at me. For both of us. My phone buzzed with a text from my boss. Hey, weird question, but did your wife do some kind of interview recently? My wife thinks she heard her on the radio. Then another from my college roommate. Bro, call me. Then my neighbor across the street. Is everything okay over there? It's spreading, I said, watching the notifications pile up. Like wildfire. Sarah buried her face in her hands. I never meant for this to happen. What did you think would happen? You went on national radio, Sarah. You talked about our sex life, our marriage, our private business. What did you think would happen? I thought the voice thing would work. You thought you could build a career on a lie about our marriage and somehow keep it secret forever? She didn't answer. My phone rang again. This time it was my mother. Mom. Thomas. Her voice had that particular tone she used when she was trying very hard to stay calm. I just got off the phone with your Aunt Maria. Mom, I can explain. She says Sarah was on the radio talking about having an arrangement with other men. I looked at Sarah, who was shaking her head frantically. It's complicated, Mom. Complicated. Her voice went up an octave. Thomas, half the family heard it. Your cousin posted about it on Facebook. Your grandmother is asking me what an open marriage means. Grandma heard it? She listens to NPR every morning while she does her crossword puzzle. She called me crying, asking if you and Sarah were getting divorced. I sat down on the steps next to Sarah, suddenly exhausted. We might be. What do you mean you might be? Thomas, what is going on? I found out about the interview this morning, Mom. I had no idea that she was seeing other people. The silence on the other end stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. You mean you didn't know? I didn't know. Oh, honey. Her voice went soft with sympathy. Oh, Thomas. I'm so sorry. That's when it hit me. The full scope of what Sarah had done. She hadn't just betrayed our marriage. She'd humiliated me in front of my entire family, our friends, our community. She'd made me look like either a liar or a fool on public radio. I have to go, Mom. Do you want me to drive down? I can be there in 3 hours. Not yet. I need to figure some things out first. Okay, but Thomas, whatever happens, we love you. The family loves you. This isn't your fault. After I hung up, Sarah and I sat in silence for a while. Cars drove by. Normal Tuesday evening traffic. People coming home from work, picking up kids from practice, stopping at the grocery store. Normal life continuing while ours fell apart. My mom wants to drive down, I said finally. What did you tell her? The truth. That I didn't know about any of this. Sarah nodded. That's probably for the best. Is it? Because now my entire family thinks you made me look like an idiot on national radio, which honestly is exactly what happened. I never meant Stop saying that. I stood up. You meant every bit of this. You researched voice modulation software. You practiced your story. You wrote a book proposal. You planned this for months, Sarah. You meant all of it. She didn't deny it. My phone buzzed with another text, then another. I turned it off. I'm going to stay at Jake's tonight, I said. Tom, please, can't we talk about this? We just did, for 2 hours. And you know what I learned? That I don't know you at all. That the woman I've been married to for 8 years is apparently a stranger. I started toward the door, then stopped. Oh, and Sarah? You might want to call that radio station, because I have a feeling they're going to want to do a follow-up segment once they find out their heartwarming story about modern marriage was actually just about adultery. I went inside to pack a bag, leaving her sitting on the porch steps, finally alone with the consequences of her choices. I moved out that night, crashing at Jake's place while I tried to make sense of the wreckage. The next few days were a blur of lawyers, awkward conversations with family members, and the surreal experience of having strangers recognize me as that guy from the radio show. The NPR station quietly pulled the episode after receiving calls questioning its authenticity, but by then, it had been shared across social media platforms and relationship forums. Screenshots lived forever. Sarah tried calling, texting, even showing up at my office once. She'd ended things with both Michael and David, she said. She'd canceled the book meetings. She wanted to go to counseling, to rebuild what we'd had. But trust, once shattered so completely, doesn't reassemble easily. Every conversation felt like walking through a minefield of potential lies. The divorce took 8 months to finalize. Sarah kept the house. I kept my dignity. She moved back to her hometown in Ohio, where fewer people had heard the interview. Last I heard through mutual friends, she was working at a marketing firm and dating someone new, someone who presumably knew the whole truth from the beginning. I stayed in the city, eventually buying a small condo downtown. Jake helped me move, and we never talked about that morning when he'd recognized Sarah's voice on the radio. Some kindnesses are best left unspoken. It took me almost 2 years to date again. When I finally met Elena at a coffee shop near my office, I told her about Sarah and the radio show on our 3rd date. She listened without judgment, then said something that stuck with me. The worst thing someone can do isn't break your heart. It's make you doubt your own reality. Sarah had done both, but time has a way of healing even the deepest cuts to your sense of self. Now, 5 years later, I understand that some people are capable of living multiple lives simultaneously, of maintaining elaborate deceptions while looking you in the eye and saying they love you. I learned that marriage isn't just about love. It's about choosing honesty even when it's difficult, about having hard conversations instead of creating fictional ones for radio audiences. I never listened to NPR's morning show again, but sometimes I wonder if Sarah ever does. If she hears other people's relationship stories and remembers the one she invented about us. If she ever regrets not just talking to me in the first place, before the lies grew too big to contain. The human capacity for self-deception is remarkable, but truth has a way of surfacing eventually. Sarah taught me that the most dangerous lies aren't the ones we tell others. They're the ones we tell ourselves to justify what we know is wrong. In the end, she didn't just lose our marriage. She lost herself somewhere in the elaborate fiction she'd created, and I'm not sure she ever found her way back.